What Do You Do is a jobs and careers podcast dedicated to demystifying careers we don't know much about and exploring unique approaches on ones we think we do. I'm Adam from Dandelion Video Production, and each episode I'll be having honest conversations about what these careers actually involve. Today I'm here with Lizzy Bernthal, a resilience specialist. Welcome to the podcast, Lizzy.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you so much, Adam.
I'm really glad to have you here.
Yay.
So if you're looking to improve your resilience, figure out your next career move, or just want to have a nosy about what Lizzy does, this podcast is for you. So without further ado, we'll start.
Yeah.
Lizzy, what does a
Yes.
resilience specialist do?
Well, it's interesting you mention that because it's the title I was given rather than actually something that you apply to do. So I think what was interesting when I first started speaking at events when I left the army, I was there people coming to me as a resilience specialist. So that's sort of how it became a name. But you don't apply to be a resilience specialist. So I think I'm all about resilient, confident leadership. That's what I'm passionate about, having supporting leaders and their teams to show up as themselves, have the courage to be themselves. And part of that is needing to be resilient.
Okay, absolutely. So you said you left the army. So I guess you have leadership experience that led you into leadership experience that you demonstrate now.
Yes. Yes. So I've led teams in about 18 countries. I've led them all over the world, including Afghanistan and some quite extreme circumstances, even on avalanches in Nepal and all sorts of things. So I've had quite extreme experiences of leadership, and resilience is something that carries through all that. And so while I was, doing my leadership, I then got the opportunity to study academically, and then which is another story actually about being resilient, is I was told at school I'm not intelligent enough for university, so I went into healthcare as a nurse and a midwife, which I loved, and then the army gave me the opportunity for a degree, and I grabbed that thinking I don't know if I'm capable of this. Got a first, then started my masters, and then I was given the opportunity to do a PhD. And at the time, and this is relevant to resilience before you think I'm waffling on,
Oh,
but
that's fine.
but the thing is about that is nurses at the time were not able to do PhDs because they were thought not deemed to be academically able, whereas doctors were funded annually. So I put up a case to say nurses, it's absolutely a reputational risk. Nurses must do PhDs, and so I was the first one. But as part of my research, and then when I left, it was incredible. Nurses were funded annually. So that was just a really wonderful thing to see. But as part of my research, you can choose what you want to do. And I was really passionate about supporting military wives, as it is generally in the army, wives that are left at home. It was during the peak of Afghanistan. And so I was wanting to interview them of what it was really like. I had been deployed, leaving my daughter behind that I might never see again, and I'd also been left at home while my husband deployed because he was serving too, not knowing if I was seeing him again ever again. So I'd experienced this, but what was really fascinating about the study was I got a real insight. It was the first time anyone had ever really explored what it's like for the family left at home, and the resilience they showed was extraordinary. And so it was through the research that I looked at resilience to understand a lot more what resilience means in practice. And so therefore, then when I left the army and I was doing lots of workshops around the world, speaking around the world on my research about resilience and leadership, that it just became a natural for me to set up my own business, to start supporting leaders more and more. So
Yeah,
that's
so
how it cut. That was the sort of the journey of doing it. And I think my mission was to end workplace toxicity. And I can tell you a story if it's relevant. But that set up my mission. As I can tell you why I chose that. But I think that's why, to me, resilience is all about not it's not avoiding adversity. It's rising up through the adversity, and to be resilient, to sort of explain what resilience is in my view, resilience is all about trusting yourself to overcome the adversity. And I think I always talk about bouncing forward You hear lots of people talking about bouncing back. I believe you're never the same person after you've had that experience. You've always developed, you've always grown as a person, learned so much from the experience, even if it's not been pleasant when you're in it. And so therefore I always talk about bouncing forward. And part of that, I see there's three stages. So the first stage is sort of uncover what is going on here, you know, what's happening. Then we sort of discover a bit more as, okay, how are we going to deal with this? Now, this could be a small thing like a project that's not going well, or it could be a massive thing like COVID, like world conflict we're going through at the moment. So you go through a period of uncover, discover, and it's just easy to remember, and then recover. When you kind of come back to a new norm, that's when you notice how far you've come and how far you've moved forward, hence the bouncing forward and not the bouncing back.
No, absolutely. So you give me a lot to work with there. What was I going to say? It's interesting how resilience has been that sort of that through line through most of what you've done throughout your career and your life. And I was to go back to the very start of that, what you were saying about how you were told at school that you weren't smart enough. I imagine it took a set. First of all, I did just speak with some education specialists who were saying about how important it is that teachers pretty much don't do that. And so that's a very weird a couple of episodes in a row where that topic's come up. But I imagine it took a certain amount of resilience to kind of go, oh, thanks for telling me that I'm going to do this now. Like, imagine it even started then when you sort of decided to go in a direction that you thought was best rather than necessarily listen to that person.
Yeah, I think it wasn't a question of like, well, I'm going to prove them wrong or anything like that. I think it was just I've always been one, and this is what I train, support my clients in, that every challenge is a learning opportunity, and also every opportunity you never know where it's going to lead. So in terms of that, I think that is why, when I was invited, if I wanted to apply for a degree, I thought, I don't know if I'm capable here. However, I'm going to give it a go, because I totally believe it's far better to give it a go. If it doesn't work out, you've had a go. Never have any regret for not giving something a go where you might have known whatever. And I think another, and this is not quite relevant to resilience, but another example which might be helpful for your listeners. When I was doing my training, we were all on my course were invited to submit a paper, an assignment for an award, for a writer's award. And no one wanted to do it. They said, I'm not capable, I'm not this. And I thought, okay, well, whatever. I'll just give it for the price of a stamp. What's to lose? Yeah. So I applied. Didn't expect to hear any more. A few months later, got a letter in those days, because you didn't have emails, to say I'd won. And I ended up in San Francisco at a conference, all expense paid, because I'd won this national writing competition. Now, that was such a lesson, and I still have a picture of the San Francisco Bridge in my office to remind me that you just never know where anything will go. So I never thought of that as resilience, but it's just resilience shows up in all sorts of ways that you don't realize and don't necessarily call it resilience. So that's a really good point. It's just, you haven't got to be fighting through burning buildings and doing the extreme stuff. We show resilience every single day, even getting out of bed when we don't want to get out of bed. That is still resilience, but we don't often market it or believe it's resilience. And as part of resilience, you have to have the confidence, because confidence is all about trusting yourself. So trusting yourself that you're going to get through it no matter what. So that's why they're very much connected.
Yeah, I've never actually thought of it that in that one way you said there, because of course the getting out of bed thing is resilience. I agree with that completely, but I've never thought of it in a sense of resilience could apply to the opportunity to do something, because like you were saying, it's the confidence to believe in your abilities, and as well as that sort of small part of it of, if you don't take the opportunity, then of course you're not going to win. But if you take the opportunity, at least you've got a chance. And I think it's kind of remarkable how many people, I mean me included, will go, oh, I couldn't possibly do that, and then I'll put myself back around eventually. But it is very easy to say no to something, isn't it? It's whereas it's quite hard to to say yes and take something outside your comfort zone.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I always talk about it as the familiar zone, not the comfort zone. Because
Okay.
when you're in the comfort zone, it's never comfortable because you actually know that you're not like stretching yourself. So that's why I always use it the familiar zone because it's what's familiar, not necessarily comfortable.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd like to actually ask a bit more questions about what you learned from resilience from the wives and partners left behind when you did your study. So,
Yes.
what were your takeaways from that?
Yeah, I think what was really interesting, I think to start with, I was really reluctant to, because I did well, it's a long time ago now, I did my research in 2008. So, and that was when it was the really worst, challenging time in Afghanistan where soldiers were being killed on a daily basis. And and I was working with them they were all in a one regiment, so they were all there were 600 single parents suddenly with all their husbands deployed, and I was debating about using the word wife because I didn't want it to sound patronising, and obviously it wasn't. They weren't all married. It's just the partner left at home.
Yeah.
But what was really interesting that they absolutely embraced the title Army Wife. Army Wife was what they wanted. That was their identity. That's what they wanted to be known for. Because being called an Army Wife demonstrated that they were resilient, that they could cope with adversity, that they would rise above. They'd keep the home fires burning while their husband deployed. They would suddenly have to do the plumbing when their husband wasn't there to fix stuff. And so it was really a very great identity for them. But the other thing that was interesting, how their decision making changed when their husband was away. So they were very disparaging about the husband making any decisions at home. However, that they did all the decisions.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite interesting. The whole kind of being an army wife does create that sort of identity of resilience by the very fact that they never know where they're going to be. They're moving every 2 years. The husband disappears for months. Don't know if they're going to see him again. It does require a certain amount of resilience. But I think what was interesting about that was that, say their child was sick. If their child was sick and they had the husband there, they'd be far calmer in their decision making. They go through, because of my health background, but they go through a sort of whole series of decision making. So the first of all, they might look online. Then they might kind of go to their GP. They might ring their mum. They might not even go to the GP. They would just like explore. And going to the doctor was the last on the list, or the out of hours. However, as soon as their husband deployed, suddenly their decision making went out the window, and they would immediately default straight to the out of hours service, which had a massive impact on the NHS. And that is why it was really interesting study the NHS took on board, because the NHS weren't always aware of when regiments deploy. So if you're in somewhere like I was in Tidworth, which is a big military area, so there were a huge number deploying at the time. So suddenly, for 6 to 9 month deployment, there would be 600 single mothers by overnight.
Right.
Whose decision making was changing. So
Yeah.
it had a massive impact on the local NHS than when their husbands are around. And so it was a really interesting study in that respect, that it, being able to create greater communication as a result of my research, that the military units would have much more communication with the NHS to say, oh, by the way, we've got this big unit, this big regiment, they're all going to deploy. You might be having more people coming to you than you would normally because suddenly they're on their own, single parents, no family nearby. I mean, there was great community with each other, supporting each other. But of course, a lot of them are living miles, hundreds of miles away from home, even different countries away from home. Yeah. So they haven't got that support network except the great support that they give each other.
That's very interesting. Like, I never thought of it like that. I mean, even when you were saying, I never even thought in a way about how you might go away and never see them again. I never actually thought about it in those terms. Even though now you've said it, it's kind of, it's of course, it's like, but no, I know. That's. I guess it's interesting how you find out these things by looking at things a different way. And I guess you sort of trailblaze that by asking the partners back home what they did, and you found that link which I guess no one else would have even realise
Yeah,
was there.
yeah, exactly. And I think I was very blessed because I'd experienced both sides. So they knew I was talking their language. They
Mm.
knew that they could really open to me because I'd lived and breathed both, been left behind, as I say, not knowing if I was ever seeing my husband again. And
Yeah.
also I deployed, not knowing if I'd ever see my daughter. My daughter was 10 at the time when I went to Afghanistan. And I remember standing on the tarmac thinking, about to get on the plane, thinking, what sort of mother am I? You know, how can I call myself a mother? We'd had 6 years of IVF to have her. She was so special.
Mm.
But at that moment, I thought, no, I've got a team to lead. If I don't go, somebody could be killed in my place.
Mm.
And how could I ever do that? And what sort of leader would I be to not go when my team were going? So, in that moment, actually, I've got eighth generation of army. I've got go great years, well, generations of army. So I've been brought up with that sacrifice. In fact, two of my uncles had been killed fighting. So I had this legacy. I had to sort of build. I had to kind of own. So therefore, after that moment, I just thought, right, that's it. I I'm doing my role. How could I not? And then all was fine, and obviously I'm back, and it's all good. But
Yeah.
but it is those. I think that's another aspect of resilience where you sometimes have to give yourself a talking to say, okay, can I do this? Can I do it? Okay, I've got to do it. Right, I'm doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting as well how you resilience does take up quite a large space in the word duty as well, I suppose, because if you don't, we may see how we have these duties to like be a parent or like I
Yeah,
could never imagine having a duty like you had to go to Afghanistan, but like without that resilience there, it's kind of you're almost fighting with yourself. Like you say, fighting with yourself. It's like you know that's the right thing to do, and but how do you build yourself up to actually do it? And I suppose that's where resilience definitely comes in, and
yeah.
yeah,
As a parent, you need huge resilience when you're kind of, especially when you're back to work and you're having 3 hours sleep because your little one is waking you up or your other children are waking you up, and that is, as a parent, we need massive resilience to
yeah,
just keep going despite disturbed nights
mm,
and sick children and all the stuff that you naturally deal with as a parent.
mm. I sorry, I can't get away from that point there. We actually were in A&E last night with our
Oh, wait.
son. Yeah, he's fine.
Oh my
He's back home now,
word.
but my wife and
Oh
son
my
stayed
word.
over in hospital last night, and I've
Oh
been
my
here
word.
worried. But like everything's fine now. But it's just like yeah, that was that immediately came into the forefront of my head of this like yes, exactly. Like even last night, it was just how do we
And
get
here
through
you
this?
are
Like
doing a podcast today. That
yeah,
shows resilience. You could have easily cancelled it. I would have totally understood. You could
I
have
know.
easily have cancelled it and said,
Yeah,
"No, sorry, I need to be in hospital with my wife."
yeah.
So all credit to you. And actually, I wonder if you should be there. But anyway,
Oh no,
that's
they're home
another
now. They're home
story.
now. They're upstairs.
Okay.
I can hear him playing. So he's fine
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
I think until the moment this morning, I went to go and pick them up because I wasn't allowed to stay. It was just this. What's my day going to look like? And
Yeah. Yeah.
how can I? Because I don't. I think it's my duty not to let people down that I've booked to meet as well.
Yeah, well,
But
that's
yeah,
resilience in
yeah,
itself.
and it's balancing out.
Commitment, leadership.
Yeah,
That's great
yeah.
leadership. Never
Thank you.
letting others down. So that's demonstrating your leadership. And I think this is another really good point because obviously I specialise in resilient leadership. Again, we don't give ourselves the credit for how we show up. We just think, well, of course I've done it. How could I let anyone down? That is leadership.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Sorry, I've never thought about it like that. You're making me think of a lot of things today, so I'm glad you're here. But no, you're absolutely right because yeah, like who we show up for and how we show up is definitely. I never
Yeah.
thought of it as leadership, but it is part of that, and
Absolutely, leadership. We
yeah,
we and I talk about in my book, which you obviously come on to, the courage to be you. We lead ourselves first before we lead others. Leadership is a behaviour. It's not a job title.
yeah,
It's absolutely a behaviour.
yeah,
You can have
yeah,
children in a playground, 5-year-olds who are leading. Don't you be nasty to my friend.
mm,
That's leadership.
yeah.
Yeah.
That actually brings me back around to the point you made about how. So, was it your family that made you decide to go into the army? That
No,
generations of it wasn't. Okay.
not at all.
Okay.
Um, no, I think I mean, I was unusual.
Right.
Whatever. Um, so I didn't join the army till I was 31, which is really late. So
Okay.
Normally people go in the army when they're 18 or yeah. So I did all my training as a nurse and a midwife in the NHS. I worked around the world. I'd worked in Hong Kong. I'd worked in the Middle East. And then every time I came back from working abroad, which I loved, the NHS never considered my experience. It was just like back to square one again. So I was thinking, how can I develop my career, but also be traveling and experiencing exciting things? And I suppose one thing was because I'd had generation after generation. I'd been brought up as I was born in Germany as a baby. I'd lived that army life with my parents. And so I suppose it was also almost subliminal within me that I could see what a great life it was. So why wouldn't I want that? But they never, ever encouraged me to go in. I mean, they were really excited when I said I was, but they never pushed me in any stretch at all.
Okay.
So
that's interesting. But I suppose were the generations of generations in the army as well, or were they various different things, or?
Yeah, I mean, my they were all senior officers. I had a generation from senior officers from general downwards, so I did have a bit of a legacy to live up to.
Yeah. I think you've managed it. Yeah.
Well, I only got to lieutenant colonel. I didn't get as far as full colonel for my brigadier and all that stuff. But yes, for a woman in the army, it was okay. Because obviously they're all men.
Oh yeah. So, well, yeah. You're the first. You're the first there as well. So that's being the first is an impressive feat. So definitely there. Where am I going? But yes, leadership. I think. That's what I want to talk about. Your book. So your book's just come out.
Yes.
And so do you want to tell us what your book's about?
Those anybody's watching it. It's called The Courage to Be You, because I'm all about, as a leader, it's the key to unlock your resilience and confidence as a leadership. So I totally believe we are all absolutely awesome. It's the stories we tell ourselves that stop us being awesome. The perfectionism, the people pleaser, the wanting to fit in, all these gremlins on our shoulder that tell us we're not good enough. So this actually takes those who read it through my methodology, which I take my clients through. My mission is for all of us to own who we are, be unapologetic ourselves. And then my mission is ending workplace toxicity, as I said, and that's because I seem to attract lots of tricky bosses when I was in the army. I had some amazing ones as well, but I didn't realise at that point I was a victim. I had no idea I was a victim. I didn't behave like a victim, but I didn't realise that I was up for it. I was up to be, have that behaviour attached to me because I was a bit of a weakling, I think, really. So then one day, and I never found, while I was speaking around the stages in the world, living the dream, thinking amazing, getting great feedback, when I was back in the office, I felt small, I felt undermined, I was like, stay in your box, who do you think you are? All those stories from childhood, don't be too big for your boots, all that stuff was coming out, and I felt I was a shell of my speaking self. And then one day my boss undermined me one time too many, and something switched, and we had our board meeting the next day, our monthly board meeting, which I absolutely used to dread. I used to not sleep well the night before. I'd rehearse, and then I'd fluff my lines, and I think, how can I call myself a leader? I'm so rubbish. And this was my moment. I told those coming that I would be speaking up. They said, yeah, great, time somebody stood up to him, blah, blah, blah. So my moment came. I literally stood up, physically stood up, and I said, enough's enough. This has to stop. This undermining behaviour has to stop. And I had this spiritual experience. It was most extraordinary, that I'd never had before, where all these empowered words were coming out. It was very calm. There was no aggression. It was very calm. And everyone around the room just went silent, pretended they weren't in the room. You could see their body language. I'm not here, I'm here. Which somehow gave me even more energy to speak up. Yeah. And it was just an extraordinary moment of, right, okay, that's going to be my mission. When I leave the army, my mission is to end workplace toxicity by supporting every leader I work with to rise as themselves, have the resilience and the confidence within them, get rid of all the body armor and the resilient and the people pleaser, have the courage to be themselves. Once you have the courage to be yourselves, and it doesn't take courage, it's another hard thing, then you show up with impact and influence, power and passion, and toxicity cannot survive in that environment.
Nice. Just try. You get a very good picture of that moment where like you did that, and it's just I imagine it was a moment that it maybe felt like it was quite a long moment, even though it was probably only a short one. And it's just one of those things. But
I've
it's clearly
no
stayed
idea. I
with
was
you.
like in such a kind of yeah. I think it probably wasn't that long at all, but it sort of felt like time stops.
Yeah.
And I had to, because this is my boss's boss. I had actually said to my boss, just but let you know, I am going to speak up. She said, "Great, good for you." And then afterwards, I overheard my boss and the person the boss that I was saying this toxicity has stopped. I heard them talking, saying, "Did you know she was going to say that?" No, I had no idea. I thought, that is not leadership.
No.
But the funniest thing was, the meeting was an hour away from where our headquarters was, and I had to sit in the back of the car with him on the way back. So I had an hour's journey having had this tirade.
Yeah.
And I just sat, luckily I was in the back of the car. They could both chat away at the front, and I just sat there thinking, oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then after that, he just ignored me, which is to be fine. I had no problem. I just think, I'll just do my thing. I'll carry on, and do what I know is the right thing to do.
Yeah, I was going to ask what the result of that was, what happened next. But how long were you under that boss before you left?
Probably another year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not a short amount of time.
But the irony of it all is, I'd wanted to be promoted to Lieutenant Colonel for about 5 years, and then I got promoted, and suddenly I showed up differently, which is why I'm so passionate about supporting leaders, particularly, to show up as themselves, because suddenly when you do, magic happens. I have extraordinary stories for clients who suddenly get rid of this stuff, show up in the boardroom, get headhunted, get promoted, and their life just becomes more than they could ever imagine.
Let's stick with that point actually. Like, so have you got an example of one success story where you've helped someone and they've done something? Have you got to achieve something because they've used your methodology?
Yes. So my methodology, my methodology is called SOAR, as in I want you to soar, SOAR. But the first step is strengthen your vision, your purpose, and your values, so you know who you are more, what's important to you. Then overcoming your beliefs from childhood or beliefs that no longer serve you, and that's where the magic really happens. The A is aligning with who you truly are, getting rid of the body armor and all that stuff, the people pleaser. And the R is restoring your resilience and your confidence. But this one client, he's become a really good friend actually, but he was extraordinary. He came to me because he was a regional financial director, not in a big company, and he came to me because he was lacking confidence. He felt he was questioning his ability as a leader. He used to have 3 sleepless nights before a board meeting. He just like I was really, basically used to fluff his lines, get frustrated, just felt he wasn't showing up as he could do. And we had a conversation, and through several conversations, there's always one story that every single person has that has redefined the rest of their life until you unpick it. And it doesn't have to be painful. It could be like, for example, a teacher, you put your hands up in a black maths class, age 6, and the teacher says, put your hand down, give somebody else a chance. So that sends a child, because all our beliefs are set by the age of 7, which is quite scary when you're a parent. I said myself, I've said to my daughter, have therapy. I've bound to knock you up already. So anyway, so that's the story. So yes, we all have those beliefs that we set by 7. So, sometimes it's something as simple as putting your hand in a maths class, and then that sends the message to you, I'm not going to put my hand up, I get shot down. And it shows up 30 years later in the boardroom. of not wanting to speak up at a meeting. But this particular story was he used to love helping his father mow the lawn. I mean, age 6, you're not helping your father mow the lawn, as you probably know with your children. But it's just like they just like holding the bag for the cuttings, or kind of feel they're sort of involved. And his father came back from work, and he ran out, and his father said it was summer's evening, and when it's the right event, you can see back in there, you can smell it, you can feel it, you can just think every single accent. So his father came in. I'm just going to mow the lawn quickly before supper. He went excitedly out to help his father. His father said, "Get back in the house, I haven't got time for this."
Right.
And that was his story, and we then joked about it as the lawnmower moment. But what was so amazing about that, and the great news about these stories is they pop up when they're ready to pop up. You might not have, he'd never thought about that story for years, but when you're ready, that story will pop up. And then, so the next board meeting, he showed up so differently. He slept well the night before. He spoke up with confidence and impact, so much so that the CEO said, "I need you on my board." He got promoted to the board, and then a few months later, he got headhunted by an amazing organisation that absolutely matched his values, and he's now just flying. Simply from identifying, I mean, obviously there was other coaching going on as well, but I think simply by identifying a story that had blocked him, that he then looked, and he was a parent as well with children a similar age, and think, "Oh, help." But but I think what was really interesting was, so he could relate it from a parent's perspective, how often we as parents just say, "I haven't got time for that, can you go and do this?" or whatever. And not that I want to scare you as a parent, but it's just these little dismissive comments. I mean, for me, I was told I was a really fat child. I was generally very overweight as a child, and I remember my godmother saying to me, "If you eat that Mars bar, no one will like you." And that set up my story, and I ended up with an eating disorder as a teenager, because my story was, if I get fat, no one will like you. Completely screwy thinking. If I get thin, people will like me, so I'll get thin.
Yeah.
It's just how our children say it. They see it as a fact, not understanding. If you've got two faces, where do you keep your other one? It's just that.
Yeah, I was thinking the axe forgets but the tree remembers, but so but it's because the parents don't even think about those things twice, do they? In that situation,
you just say these things, I just sometimes I in the supermarket, and I just see some parents just see the way they talk to their children. I think, "Oh my word, you're gonna oh dear," because we don't have understanding. There's no blame. We don't understand this stuff.
Yeah, and there's no guidebook.
Everyone does the best they can in the circumstances they're in, and overcomes extraordinary adversity.
Yeah, that's interesting. About how it was just, I really like the idea of that one story, because I did actually find a similar thing when I did CBT therapy, because I'd gone through a tough time a few years ago. And I don't know if you know about the rules of living model, where you've internalized it's pretty much the same thing you said, but it's got a label on it. It's about how you've internalized these things about, and mine, I can't remember the story now, but one of mine was, if I if I never make a mistake, then everyone will like me, or something like that. And it was just like, so I was very, So and I was very much, if I didn't make even a minor mistake, I was just mortified. It's just like, I know everyone's going to hate me, that kind of thing. And it's just, it's hard. It seems like these things shouldn't mess us up, but they clearly do, and like they obviously have this lasting impact that we just have to take our time to self-reflect and figure out how we've changed, and how it was wrong to believe that thing that we've internalized.
Yeah, and I think 90% of our mind is subconscious, so that's driving the show. And so therefore, once we start unpicking these stories that are deep in our subconscious, as I say, I hadn't thought of that for years, but the great news about our subconscious, that's there to protect us, but doesn't always protect us by these stories. But however, when we are ready, these stories pop up. and then we can deal with them and see them as an adult for what it is. It was just a side comment that meant nothing, but as a child, we internalize it as I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I'll never succeed. All these really negative connotations that we create in our heads, and therefore we don't go for opportunities because we think, oh, your story, very brave to share that, but your story, well, I'm not going to, if I fail, no one will like me, and well, so, but I won't go for anything scary because this could be the outcome.
Yeah, yeah. That's exactly,
Yeah,
and it's like, yeah, and we've all got those things, and we don't even realise they're there,
yeah,
like you're saying, until they affect our behaviour or cause us to start struggling. And yeah, it's like it's vitally important to do something like what you offer, and to figure out, to unpick it all, and to get more on even key, I suppose. Like to to grow, I suppose, as well.
yeah. I mean, it's a massive privilege for me to do. I love it. It's such a privilege. I think this is why I'm so passionate about it, which is why I end up writing the book, because I wanted to share it with us. Amazing. I was never going for bestseller. I was completely shocked when it went straight to number one in 5 categories. But I think that was because I just want to share the message. Look, you've got it all already. Don't second guess yourself. Look, these are some tips that if I can't reach everyone, you've got it in the book to just start looking at how to have those conversations, how to get rid of the body armor, how to feel more confident. Lots of tips and tools and stories to put practical tools in place straight away that you can, yeah, can transform how you live and how you show up and how you own who you are.
Yeah, and congratulations
Yeah.
on that achievement as well. That's incredible. Well done.
Well, I'm still in shock. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, I was completely blown away by the
yeah,
impact of the book. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, just another success in your like long history of successes. So yes, well, like, well done for doing it, and well done for like, yeah,
Yeah,
like you've the proof's in the pudding of like, if you don't try, then you never know, do you? So what was I
yeah,
going to say was talk.
exactly.
You were saying about your example of your friend who'd succeeded because they unpicked this. So I was thinking during that, what does sort of a client engagement like if someone comes to you to ask them to help with their confidence? How long do you
Yes,
work with them? How do you approach it? What kind of things do you, like?
yeah.
Do you apply the same methodology every time, how do you approach an
Yeah,
engagement?
yeah. So I love speaking. So I do lots of speaking about resilience on stages, but also, doing workshops. I work with both organisations to do their resilient workshops and leadership training and stuff. And then I also do one-to-one coaching. So I think to start with, before, well, obviously we have a conversation, see if it's appropriate. I've got a resilient diagnostic, which is a 20-question, 2-minute quick fast fire quiz that they do, which is developed from all the various clients I work with over the years. It's things like, do you find it easy to say yes when you want to say no? All that, so various sort of things within it, and that gives me, it's a really great diagnostic. And they get immediate feedback, so they can get some tips, and then I have a conversation to give them more tips. But I think that gives me a real indication of where they're struggling most. And it's generally often having challenging conversations. It's the people pleaser stuff that often kicks in, and the perfection. Sometimes it's delegation. There's a whole load of various aspects to leadership that we diagnose. So so yes, I have my SOAR methodology that I've just talked about. However, it's not a linear I mean, we often start with values to start with, because I think
Mm.
that's really important to understand your values and what your mission is, what your purpose is. That takes some unpicking as well. But to understand what legacy do you want to leave? Why are you doing what you do? So that gives the grounding. And then as far as kind of the methodology, we cover it all, but not. It depends where the client comes as to where we start. Often they're not ready to unpick stuff from the childhood.
Mm.
That sort of comes later when they feel really psychologically safe. I'm always passionate about providing a psychologically safe space. My coaching is always online because I think it works really well, where they can be sitting at home with a cup of tea, they haven't got to worry about travel, no one's around, they can speak openly. Events I do both online and speaking and workshops and conferences and things, both online and face to face. But I think it's I meet them where they're at. Sometimes a session will be, oh, I've got this really challenging conversation. Can we discuss how I managed that? Or I had a conversation that didn't go well. Can we unpick that? So some sessions they bring stuff with them to say, oh, I've got this real challenge. Can we unpick it? Other times it's like, okay, let's just explore what courage means to you. And therefore we can start. It's very much intuitive as to what they need at that moment.
That's interesting, because I suppose like it's not the same as anything like therapy. It is something more like you're helping solve a specific issue, and you're helping guide them to reach the conclusion themselves, aren't you? So,
Yes.
but I suppose because I was thinking of a conversation I had with a therapist as part of this podcast, and they were saying about the one challenge that they face is that people are hesitant to start the process. Where I suppose that's not an issue with you, where people, they want to solve the problem. They're coming to you because they're buying in completely to what you offer, and they want you to help them unpick the issue and then move forward, don't they?
I mean, because of my health background, we verge a little bit on towards the therapy side when we're doing the unpicking stuff. But I think that is why, it's 2 minutes. It's on my LinkedIn. It's easy to find. Just actually, I wonder how resilient I really am. And most are really surprised that they've got more resilience than they think, or more confidence than they believe. But I think the very fact they're interested indicates there's something they want to improve. And therefore, I just have a conversation, and then we go from there. So it's a sort of and of course now they can just buy the book and get the tips straight from the book. So it's not. I think therapy is so important. I think unpick the stuff is so important. But going to a therapist can feel more scary in the fact that, what they're going to find. Yeah. Whereas this is just this. I mean, but whereas this is can just pick up a book and just like think, okay, I've got a conversation. What are Lizzie's tips? I'll just go to this. That I've got some tips now to go into this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was going to say, leading off from that, what would you say are the misconceptions about resilience? Because I've always had one until a couple of years ago when I did do CPT, which was resilience means you don't get knocked down. You're basically invulnerable, and obviously that's completely not right. I learned that the hard way. But what would you say the misconceptions are from your point of view?
I think the misconceptions is it's for strong people that I'm not strong enough to be resilient. And as I say, we are all resilient. As you say, last night, your wife going to A&E, that takes resilience. That, how do we manage all this and stuff? So I think that's the misconception, is that. And I think also the other thing about resilience, it is when you're in it, you don't feel you're resilient. There's this sort of image that, bat it all off, and I'm gonna, the Bay of Biscay, don't worry, I'll swim through. But when you're right in the middle of it, you do not feel resilient. And I think, just if it's relevant, having a story when I went to, I claimed when I was in the army, I was in the Himalayas and we were in an avalanche, and that's another whole story of resilience. But actually, what was interesting, a couple of years ago, I went with my mastermind group to Everest. It wasn't Everest. I've been to Everest. This was like Snowdon, very different. Snowdon. I wasn't complacent because I had been in the Himalayas, and I wasn't complacent ever that Snowdon was going to be easy. But at least I had the confidence to know I had extreme circumstances in the Himalayas that this was not have potential not to be so bad. But I think we started off, and there was 20 of us, and then sunny day, and so forth. And then we had all our stuff with us, like waterproofs and etc. And then the weather just deteriorated dramatically. I don't know if you've ever been to Snowdon, but anyway.
Carry on with your story first.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You obviously have, yes.
Yes, I have, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, you might relate to this. But anyway, so the weather deteriorated. We had 50-mile-an-hour winds. It was freezing cold. The rain was torrential. So some just said, right, that's it. I'm going back for coffee. I'm not going anywhere. Or the train that goes up to the top for tourists got cancelled. Yeah. We were sort of about 2 hours in where I fell, thinking, I'm glad I got a will. I've had a few lives here. As I was hurling myself down the mountain, and thinking, maybe this is the 9 lives I've already had. Maybe this is the last one. But anyway, it was all good and fine. And I My hand was a bit sore, but I just took some paracetamol, covered my glove up, carried on walking. As I got further up, the leader said, I said, is this, there was about 5 of us left, but most said, like, I'm bailing out. And I said, is this crazy doing this, or do we continue? And he said, I'm not prepared to make that decision for you. And I thought, right, that's a green light then, because I'm not going to be sitting in the dinner tonight thinking, oh, I gave up, I was useless, that I'll do whatever I can. And so we carried on walking, and suddenly it was a rock avalanche in Nepal. Ironically, we came down from the snow line because it was an avalanche risk, and then we got bombarded by rock. But anyway, we all survived amazingly. But, and I was leading. I just had to take over, and everyone was all right. Anyway, so I'd had this experience, and so when I was in this Snowdon, in this torrential rain, and the rock was slipping down the mountain because of the winds, I had that deja vu of that avalanche, and I started shaking, and I started feeling I was in that avalanche, and I just thought, right, okay, I got to stay on my own. Most people around quite relaxed chatting. I said, no, I need to just focus on a step at a time. So I made sure there's somebody ahead of me so I could see they were there, and I made sure there was somebody behind me so I could see that I was sort of, and I just literally took one step at a time, thinking, right, one more step, one more step, one more step, one more step. And people were coming down, so, oh, you're nearly there. I thought, hang on a minute, I've been doing it for an hour. I was clearly not nearly there. But anyway, and eventually we got to the top.
Yeah.
And the friend I was with said, yeah, we've got to celebrate. And I said, I can't celebrate. I know going down, from experience, going down can be more challenging than coming up. She said, no, you've got to. And she said, oh. So I did this sort of picture. She took a picture of me, and I'm so glad I did, because I use it in quite a lot of my talks. Yeah. And then we came down, and then it took about 6 hours in the whole kind of thing. Got back, I took my gloves off. I thought, oh, doesn't look that good. And actually, I fractured my hand. When I fell early on in the trip, I'd fractured my hand, and I ended up in A&E, and then couldn't drive for 6 weeks and all this stuff. But I think I use that story because that is what resilience means in reality. You're not thinking, whoa, I'm great, I'm going to get through this. You're thinking, literally, that was physically one step at a time. When you're right in the middle of it is the metaphorical one step at a time. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to get through this. And, and I think then you look back and think, whoa, I would never have imagined I would have done all that. But you did. So that's why take on resilience. I think there's a lot of hype about it. You need to be more resilient. You need to, ban it all off and send it all away. That is not resilience. Resilience is knowing that somehow, you don't know how, you're pulling up your bootstrings, whatever it is, you will survive, and you will get through it, and then be stronger for it.
You're saying that I had a almost not quite identical experience, but a very similar experience on Snowdon, and I can particularly relate to I'm going to do this, I've got to get through this, like that one step at a time thing, because we did is it Crib Goch? We did Crib Goch.
Yeah, we did. There's three paths, isn't there? We did the. Yeah. None of us had ever. Well, I'd unusually been to Nepal, but no one else in the group had done any. We were in the middle. I think there was a really extreme one, an easy one, and when you say the name, I'll know it. But it was kind of the tricky, but not the trickiest.
Is that the pig path?
Yeah.
So
it was a pig. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
So we did Crib Goch, which is the knife edge, which was the hard one, and we were told it's just a little bit of scrambling, and I was like, okay, that sounds fine, a little bit of scrambling, whatever. And they didn't. We weren't advised to bring waterproofs or proper trousers.
Luckily, we took the whole lot.
Yeah. We'd never scrambled before, so we didn't know what that meant. So we're just like, we'll just get the right walking boots. It's fine.
So dangerous.
And then we did like a flat, like all played up. I was hanging on, going, if there's a time where I want to call in helicopter rescue, that is when it needs to be, right? Because I was terrified. And then when we got to the top of that bit, so no way back down, it started raining, and so we were on the knife edge for like I think we were up there for like 8 hours just to get across slowly because it took so long. We didn't even get to the top because we ended up getting so far and then just going around and coming down. But you couldn't see off it because it was so misty.
Yeah, we
And we
couldn't
were
see
on that.
anything. We
Yeah,
literally had 100, like 100, well, not even that, kind of that sort of distance. You can't see miles, but
yeah,
you couldn't see anything.
yeah,
And yeah, is that and the rock. Probably same with you. The rain was so heavy, it was, and the wind was so strong. The rock was falling down the mountain.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing was, I was making a
God.
video about it because that's why I was there, and I had to stop. I had a GoPro on my chest, and I have footage of me just
Yeah.
inching my way along this thing where like it was one step was death, and it was just like, yeah, I got through it,
Wow.
and you didn't
Wow.
feel like I was going to get through it at the time, but I knew I was going. I knew I had to, and yeah, so. But like, yeah, it was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life, but I survived it. So
Amazing.
yeah,
But what was really interesting that you said that I knew I had to.
mhm,
That is the resilience. There were a lot of people that would not say I knew I had to. They said, right, I'm bailing out now.
mhm,
So this is where courage comes in. Courage to me is when you have no guarantee of the outcome. It doesn't have to be going to burning buildings. It's when you have no guarantee. You had no guarantee at that point, thinking, "Oh my God, what happens if I die?"
yeah,
Literally,
yeah, yeah,
you those are the thoughts probably going through your head.
yeah, absolutely.
You had the courage and the resilience to think, "I'm not going to die. I'm going to get to the top, or go as far as I can. I'm going to keep going." But then that was the point no return,
Yeah,
and that's what you chose. Even this is the other point actually I love making is that we always have a choice, even if we feel we have no choice. We have chosen not to have a choice. Does that make sense?
yes, yes, it does.
Yes.
Yeah,
So even when you felt you had no choice to keep going on,
mm,
you actually did make a choice
yeah,
that you would keep going on.
yeah, yeah.
We don't always give ourselves credit for that. That's huge courage.
I'm feeling very uplifted from this episode. Like you've complimented so many times. Like so, I've been definitely uplifted today. So thanks for starting my
No, but
Friday off very
it's
well.
true. This is why I'm
Yeah,
so passionate about it, because we
yeah,
don't acknowledge ourselves for what we're putting in, the effort we're putting in, and the courage we're showing
mhm,
to do this. We've just batted off, or I got to the top, got to the bottom, whatever. Yeah, it was a bit tricky. We don't acknowledge ourselves what we've been through,
mhm. No,
and
absolutely.
that
No,
is resilience.
yeah, I've been definitely guilty of that as well. Where it's just like someone complimenting me doing a good job, and it's just like, no, it's my job. Like just because I do it,
Yeah,
like I'm supposed to be good at it. Like I wouldn't have picked it otherwise. But it's like, but no, for them it was like amazing, and it's just,
yeah.
and I've just missed successes like that so many times that I didn't savor successes anymore. So I had to retrain myself to appreciate that I could. I was good at
Yeah.
things.
It's building the muscle. It's building the muscle of every time we challenged, we're building that muscle to trust ourselves to get through more stuff if we need to in the future.
Absolutely. Um, so what would you say the most challenging part of what you do is?
Um, I think interesting question. I think the challenging part is c- having the conversation initially to help them believe that they've got it all already.
Mm,
And then obviously having further conversations they realize that. But I think it's giving them the confidence right from the beginning. You've got this. We are just having some conversations to help you realize you've got this.
yeah.
And that's the biggest message. um, and I think the biggest, I wouldn't say challenge, the frustration is the fact that sadly so many people want to don't want they feel they're not capable.
Mm,
That makes me so sad when you hear stories that they just don't feel I'm not up to this, and yet we're all up to it. And I think the more we acknowledge who we truly are and not what other people want us to be, just the magic happens. And it just makes me so sad when I see people, just saying, "Oh, I'm not good enough for this," or "I can't do this." Who am I to think I can achieve this?
Yeah.
And it's tragic, really tragic.
You saying about already having the skills reminds me of one of my favourite quotes, which is, I'm going to butcher it, but hopefully I get the intention across. It's, did my dark days give me the skills to survive this, or did the dark days prove that I already had the skills? Because
Amazing.
yeah, because a lot of people. I
It's
think I'll look up
amazing.
the quote is here for a minute,
That's a
but
fantastic quote. Yeah,
yeah, because
yeah,
a lot of people go, "Oh, you suffer through that and you learn something, right?" But it's just like, well, not. I don't really like that because that implies you have to have negative experiences to thrive. Whereas I feel like
yeah,
if you have learned, you do innately have those skills, which we all
yeah,
have, like you're saying. Then all those dark days did was just demonstrate to you, just give you the opportunity to use those skills that you didn't get to use before.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think the human spirit is beyond what we can ever imagine. I also believe that we always have a choice. And I think what I find extraordinary, certainly when I was in Afghanistan, not me, not all, but the extraordinary surgeons redefined it non-survivable injuries. We had the first triple amputee when I was in Afghanistan. And obviously the surgeons and the anaesthetists were extraordinary, saving all these people. But what I always found extraordinary was the human spirit. The guys that survived were determined to survive, and you could have two completely comparable individuals who, from a clinical perspective, were exactly the same. And I totally agree. One chose to survive and the other didn't. And you hear these extraordinary stories on aircraft when they crash, heaven forbid, where someone gets off completely unscathed. The person sitting next to them just doesn't survive because they haven't got whatever the reason is, they haven't got the fight to, right, I'm going to survive, I'm going to survive, I'm going to get out this plane, I'm going to get out this plane, and just think, oh, I surrender, I mean, obviously that's a different psychology, but I think
Yeah.
it's yeah, I never undermine our human spirit because we see extraordinary individuals who just do extraordinary things, and we're all
Think,
capable of that.
including you. I've judging from all
Well,
the things you listed out today about how you're successes. So yeah, I'd definitely include you in that. So yes,
I do. I'm still not always practice what I preach.
yeah.
Honestly, I do sometimes question my ability, but yeah. I mean, this is why I'm so passionate. So passionate, I think, about it because we are all incredible.
No, I think the last couple of points are an excellent point to wrap up this on because
Yeah.
you have blown my mind in so many different ways today. So I'm very glad that you could join me today. I have one last
Uh,
question, which is more of a general
yes.
one, and is I think it might come out of what you just said actually. But what's one bit of general career advice that you give to anyone in any field?
Go for it. Just go for it. Never ever look at an application for a new role and think, oh, I can't do that. And I think this is a real, I don't hate talking about gender because I'm all about inclusivity and stuff. But what's really interesting is you probably well know, and then never, it's bad to generalize. However, if you're, from my experience, leaders who are men will look at a job description. Oh, I've got five, I'll make the rest. A woman will look, oh, I've got 10. I've got 15, maybe I can apply for it.
Hmm.
And I know that I hate to be generalizing, but I just think, just go for it. Just go for it. You never know where it will lead. And I think I love Richard Branson's quote is say yes and work it out afterwards.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I can't possibly do that. And yet, actually, when you do it, you think, whoa, that was amazing. I'm so glad stepped up to do that.
No, I really like that as well. That's a good quote.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for that, and thank you very much for joining me today. I hope
Well,
you
it's
had a
such a
good time.
joy. Yeah, thank you. It's been awesome. Thank you so
Great.
much.
If you'd like to know more about Lizzy and the work that she does, please connect with her on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please subscribe. It really does make a difference to helping it grow and keep us going. Next week, I'll be talking with Dawn Hardman to find out exactly what a disc practitioner does. Thank you.